This is Roster Castanado interviewing Bob Penfield at the February 2017 Disney Animania convention. So now, what was it like to work at Disneyland as a cast member?
Well, when I started as a ride operator in Fantasyland, and it was just hectic back in those days. In the first summer, everything we were just learning, how to operate the rides. I was on a carousel, so I worked in operations for about 11 years. Then I moved over to the facilities division, or that time it was called maintenance, and then in various parts in the facilities, and moved around there in, my golly, I don't know, 4 or 5 different departments, and finally finished my career there in 97 in project management, and which is, just what it means. You got construction jobs, whatever, and then you manage it with contractors or Disneyland personnel.
Very nice. Okay, and so what was it like to work at Disneyland?
I loved it, and but after 42 years, I was kind of ready to retire. I mean, it's a great place to work. I mean, first of all, you gotta think that you're working in a beautiful area. Everything's pretty there.
Right, yeah.
And then the people are really fantastic. The organization is fantastic. I loved it when Walt was around, and that was tragic when he passed away in '66.
Yeah.
I wasn't too happy with Disneyland under the Eisner regime. I didn't really like the way the park was being operated.
Yeah, wow.
But no complaints on that. I'd go back there and work again, but after 42 years and my hearing was going bad, and I decided, I retired at age 60. So I just decided I'd had enough, and I had a lot of reasons. One of them was, let somebody else have a job.
Very nice. And here's the last question. What do you think how did you get to work for Disneyland?
How do I what?
How did you get to work for Disneyland?
Oh, well, I graduated from high school in early June, and I decided to go out and look for a summer job. And I went to a couple of different places with my buddy Ray Vandy Walker, who is an original employee also. And we finally decided to go out to Disneyland, and we went to the old personnel office over on Old West Street. And we went in there and filled out an application or whatever. And I've always said that I'm really lucky. And so I'm with Ray, and he happened to know the secretary of the personnel manager, Chuck Whalen. And so we filled out the applications, and we were walking out, and we were kind of in the parking lot, and her name was Yvonne, and she went in and said, "Hey, Chuck, you know what? These guys are really nice guys. We ought to hire them." Well, they were hiring everybody they could in those days. And she come running out in the parking lot and said, "Come on in, you're going to be hired." And that's how we got hired.
Very nice.
And then I worked there the first summer, and then I, already signed up to go to college. And that was at Fullerton College, because Cal State Fullerton wasn't even built yet. And so what I did after the first summer, I went to school from about 7 a.m. to about 1 o'clock, or sometimes 2 o'clock, depending upon what my classes were. And then I had they had some stupid things in those days. You had to take gym class. Well, I didn't take gym class. I just told them, I said, "Hey, give me an F. I don't care anything about going to gym. I didn't come there to get in shape." And so then I'd get out of school, and I'd rush to Disneyland, and the park was open until 10 o'clock at night. So, and by the time we closed down and everything, and I was in Fantasyland as a ride operator, and I'd get all the attendance sheets off of every attraction, and then I'd go into the castle, and I had the keys to the castle, and there was, of course, nothing in there, and throw the switch and turn off the lights and go turn in the attendance sheets for each ride.
Very
Hard
nice.
to believe, huh?
I know, spectacular.
Yeah, and so then I did that for a couple of years. And then by that time, I'd got 2 years, but I hadn't got my degree yet. I was at that time going for a associate degree. And so then I decided, well, you know what, I think I'll just stay. And so I started working full-time a couple of years later. But I was full-time anyway. I was always full-time and never left. Then when I started in operations, and then when I got transferred over to facilities, and I had some construction background and doing work on the side. And so then I went back to school and got my degree in maintenance construction management. And so then I just stayed in facilities. And of course, I did a lot of other things. I worked at the Squaw Valley for the 8th Winter Olympic Games. I worked in the New York World's Fair for 2 different years, 64, 65. I worked at Walt Disney World, helped open it up for 3 months in 71. And then I was over in Tokyo Disneyland from 82, 83 for 9 months. And I had a chance to go to Paris, but I turned it down. I really didn't care about going over to work in Paris, and my mother was very sick, and I figured she might pass away, which she did. And so I never made it to Paris. And of course, I haven't been to Paris, and I haven't been to Hong Kong. I've been back to Tokyo one time.
Ah. Very.
So that's it. And then I decided in 1997, I just decided to retire.
Ah.
And I still do things like this. And then, you know, one of the things I told people that I was going to do, and I started doing interviews before I ever retired, but I said, I'm going to write a book. And then I kind of lost interest. But then people would come up and they say, Bob, you got to write a book before everybody forgets all that stuff, you know. And so I kept plugging away, and then David got me going, you know. David Koenig's my publisher, editor, and he got me going. And so finally last December, we published the book.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for allowing me to interview you.
Oh, you're welcome, Russell.
Well, there you have it. That was Ross Castanaro interviewing Bob Penfield at the February 2017 Disney Animania Convention.